Hello, young scholars. Today we're starting a new part of the unit all about challenging traditional authority. But we're finished with the Renaissance. We're moving on to a time period called the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation actually overlaps with the Renaissance. It occurs at the same time. Our aim question for today is, what were the causes of the Protestant Reformation? We look at causes and effects a lot in social studies. Today we're going to be focused just on the causes. Now for our do now, we're going to break down the phrase Protestant Reformation, because believe it or not, we can actually get some clues as to what we're going to be studying if we just break down those words. The first thing we want to do is break down the phrase Protestant Reformation. We can actually learn a lot about what the time period is about just by breaking down these two words. So the first word is Protestant. The root word of Protestant is protest. To protest means to express disapproval. It means you disapprove of something. Those three letters at the end of the word Protestant, A-N-T, is called a suffix. The suffix A-N-T means likely or inclined. So if we put those two things together, the word Protestant means likely to express disapproval. Okay, let's take a look at the word Reformation. This word we can actually break into a few different parts. The prefix of re or re means again. Form means to make or to shape. Now the suffix you see at the end of Reformation, T-I-O-N, you'll see a lot in social studies. Anytime you see a T-I-O-N at the end of a word, it turns that word from a verb or an action word into a noun or a thing. So if we put all of those three pieces together, Reformation generally means a thing that makes over again. Okay, so let's take the breakdown of Protestant and Reformation and put it together, and it'll give us an idea of what we're going to be learning about in this unit. The Protestant Reformation was a movement when people disapproved of the Roman Catholic Church and tried to give it a makeover or tried to reshape it into something new. This text is going to be available for you on Google Classroom, and your assignment today is to make annotations in the annotations and summary box, just as usual. But in this video, I'm going to read through the text with you, and your challenge is going to be to annotate or to summarize each section using only 10 words or less. Let's read together. Our aim question, one more time, is what were the causes of the Protestant Reformation? Our source today comes from Patterns of Interaction, which is a textbook, and was published in 2012. Introduction. By the 10th century, the Roman Catholic Church had come to dominate religious life in Northern and Western Europe. However, the Church had not won universal approval, meaning not everyone agreed with the Church. Over the centuries, many people criticized its practices. They felt that church leaders were too interested in worldly pursuits, such as gaining wealth and political power. Even though the church made some reforms during the Middle Ages, people continued to criticize it. Prompted by the actions of one man, that criticism would lead to rebellion. Causes of the Reformation. By the year 1500, additional forces weakened the church. The Renaissance, emphasis on the secular and the individual, challenged church authority. The printing press spread these secular ideas, so more and more people were believing in them. In addition, some rulers began to challenge the church's political power. In Germany, which was divided into many competing states, it was difficult for the Pope or the Emperor to impose central authority. Finally, northern merchants resented paying church taxes to Rome. Resented means they hated it. Spurred by these social, political, and economic forces, a new movement for religious reform began in Germany. It then swept much of Europe. Criticisms of the Catholic Church. Critics of the Church claimed that its leaders were corrupt. The popes who ruled during the Renaissance patronized the arts, spent extravagantly on personal pleasure, and fought wars. Pope Alexander VI, for example, admitted that he had fathered several children. Many popes were too busy pursuing worldly affairs to have much time for spiritual duties. The lower clergy had problems as well. Remember, clergy is a person who works for the church. When they say lower clergy, they're talking about people who worked for the church but were lower than the Pope. Many priests and monks were so poorly educated that they could scarcely read, let alone teach people. Others broke their priestly vows by marrying, and some drank to excess or gambled. Early calls for reform. Influenced by reformers, people had come to expect higher standards of conduct from priests and church leaders. In the late 1300s and early 1400s, John Wycliffe of England and John Huss of Bohemia had advocated church reform. They denied that the Pope had the right to worldly power. They also taught that the Bible had more authority than church leaders did. In the 1500s, Christian humanists like Desiderius Erasmus and Thomas More added their voices to the chorus of criticism. In addition, many Europeans were reading religious works and forming their own opinions about the church. The atmosphere in Europe was ripe for reform by the early 1500s. The word ripe here means it was ready for reform, ready to be changed. Now, I really like this chart, and I want you to give a little bit of time reading through it. It's a nice summary of the social, political, economic, and religious reasons why the Reformation happened, why people started to protest against the Catholic Church and try to reform it. So this is kind of like a list of grievances or things that people felt were wrong with the church at the time. Okay, your job now is to go back to the text, and your challenge is to try to summarize each section in 10 words or less.